Welcome back into the metaverse. Today, we're going to be diving into something that's kind of interesting in the aspect around events. Now, when you think of the metaverse today, you're probably thinking traditional things that we talk about, like Sandbox or maybe Blocktopia or what's happening over in Decentraland. But what we could be seeing is a new revolution in how not only enterprises, but also just in general, entertainment, all things we know of today that are in real life could be converting to a digital aspect. My name is Paul Barrow. Welcome back to Metaverse Insider. Today, joining me, of course, is Josh Rush, who is the co-founder and CEO of a company and a project called Surreal Events. So great to have you on the show.
Yeah, Paul, great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
So Josh, a little bit about Surreal. There's a lot happening. I was looking at a lot of the links, in our research up to the show today, and want to learn a little bit more about what you guys are trying to do as a whole. There's a lot of metaverse projects out there. There's a lot of games that are kind of brandishing the metaverse, moniker. And then there are a lot of people that are looking at the term metaverse and kind of questioning whether or not maybe we already are in a metaverse with what we have today in our UX and kind of our 2D environments. Tell me what you guys are trying to do.
Yeah, so Surreal is you can think of it as a metaverse platform as a service that it's built on Unreal Engine. All of the experiences are pixel streamed to your browsers, so users all they need is just a laptop or a tablet and a decent internet connection, and they can basically log right into any immersive multiplayer experience online, right? So it's definitely more URL centric, like the web as we know it today.
Mhm.
As we think about, the challenges that exist in building anything that's close to we'll say the promise or the hype of the metaverse is we're going to need a lot of tools, a lot of collaboration to get
Yeah.
there. And so our team has been focused really for the last year and a half, 2 years on developing tool sets that other developers, agencies, brands, organizations that want to publish metaverse ready applications to the web can do so.
All right, so there's a lot to unpack there when you think about the use cases for metaverse, and this is something that we've talked about here on our show quite a bit. Gaming has kind of led the way, obviously, with NFTs, the interaction, the potential to maybe connect one metaverse to another metaverse, utilize and cross-utilize NFT use cases, scenarios like that. But once you start to move outside of gaming, in reality, I think it completely opens up in terms of opportunity because there's just so much happening within the event space, a lot happening within the idea of virtual, which is getting more and more, I think, front page headline news today with what we've seen with not only Meta, their work obviously with AR, VR, and now you've got Apple now with mixed reality coming into play. There's a lot moving in this direction in terms of just the hardware that's going to be required today. But what you're telling me is this is a browser-based product, has a 3D environment, Unreal Engine based. When you look at this, what would you say is the killer application for what you guys are doing? I see a lot of different stuff that we're showing on screen right now that seems like it
Sure.
would be great because I see, you get into the automotive, fashion, entertainment, all those kind of things. How would you guys kind of point and say, this is one of the areas we see a lot of growth in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you look across all of the relevant applications that have popped up in the last 2 years, whether it's Decentraland or Sandbox, a lot of these worlds which have been created are very event centric, right? They
Yeah.
they kind of scale up and down around an event, and so Surreal, which was born out of a team that was an event production live marketing agency,
Hmm.
was developing the platform through the lens of how to run a successful event online, which is, to say that you've got a moment in time, you've got something that's been highly curated, programmed for either delivery of some, launch of new product or service, or the opportunity to connect and network with people in real time. And so a lot of the metaverse applications that you see gaining traction now are very event centric. And we
Yeah.
think that that's going to continue as we continue to advance forward and progress with this technology over the next several years. But there are challenges to creating something that is more persistent, that has the kind of persistent use where you've got like gaming in particular. You mentioned gaming, right? Gaming always has a core loop mechanism. right? And this core loop mechanism that is designed into every game, which is desired to give you somewhere to go to escape, right? Games are for escapism. The metaverse isn't necessarily escapism. It's got to be utilitarian, right? You've got to
Right.
have reasons to want to go for work, for entertainment, to socialize with friends. So, when we think about the core loop that's going to be required to bring somebody into a metaverse, or a little m metaverse experience, you've got to look to gaming, but you've also got to be able to think about what's the business application for this, because we're not building video games, right? That's not what the metaverse is. It's not one big video game.
Right.
It's a simulation, and each of those simulations have to serve in the best interest of the purpose of the team that's developing it. So there's definitely aspects of gaming. There's aspects of events. There's aspects of e-commerce that are all sort of converging in an entirely nascent new industry, and that is metaverse. And we're
Yeah.
incredibly excited about it, but we're very honest about the fact that it is, if this is a timeline, we're literally at day zero, right? We're just getting started.
Yeah. I was looking at a couple of headlines just in general. I mean, we've done many events over the years. We've been event producers here from our studio. One thing that I've always curious, and I've done this for many years in the past, is that we were kind of evolving into a virtual event platforms when virtual events weren't cool. And
Right.
we kind of saw that as a potential one to reach larger audiences. But you're right. One of the big holdbacks of virtual events in general prior to 2019 was, I mean, it was the GoToMeeting clunky app, software, no interface, very little visual, absolutely no integration with marketing or any kind of e-commerce, any kind of those things that really would have to take place for this to grow. I was looking back at this article, Events Industry 2022 to 2030, adopting various advanced software solutions for offering better event management services. This is kind of getting into the overall side of things. They also had an interesting point right here, and I wanted to kind of just show the size of this. I was surprised at just the U.S. corporate event market, over almost $500 billion here. So by 2030, that's just a few years away. When you
Yeah.
look at the overall side of things and the potential here for real, I mean, because really a lot of people look at metaverse as maybe being the next internet, so to speak. If you think about what is happening from a VR aspect, what we might see in AR with Apple, and really kind of the evolution of just what we've seen with Unreal Engine and just some of the technology that's being really introduced right now, especially because of crypto. When you think about all those things, do you feel like first of all, first question is, do you feel like there's enough bandwidth to be able to handle this kind of mega shift? If you took all of the internet today and had to flip that to an Unreal Engine type experience in metaverses around the world, is there enough tech capability out there to be able to convert that?
Well, I mean, that's a big question to try to unpack. I mean, I think the short answer is no. I mean, when you think about the scale of the internet and the amount of content that's online now, and if
Hmm.
you break that down even by, who's actually creating, who are the original creators of content for the internet, who
Right.
are the sort of influencer resellers or resharers, if you will, of the internet, and then everybody else is just consuming the content, right? I mean, you're talking about a slice of the internet as we know it is being largely created, curated, and produced by a very small percentage of people who are using it. And
Would
so
agree.
for us, when we think about the future of the web, which we believe is a 3D future, we do believe, and it's going to be, I guess, to use the word hybrid. I mean, there's going to be the traditional 2D elements, which are just a better user experience to consume a 2D
Hmm.
interface
Hmm.
that can open portals to 3D worlds. And so we're at the very beginning of that stage now. And there isn't, an industry that's ready and mature to even be able to begin to tackle the smallest slice of the internet. I mean, think about if there were 10,000 Decentraland projects going or
Hmm.
10,000 Surreal projects going today, that would be, an order of magnitude that we probably can't really conceive. And the reason why is because it's difficult, right? I mean, if you look at AAA gaming studios or indie gaming studios, I mean, there are, code standards, muscle memories, proprietary, means of doing things that are very intensely and intently purposed for the creation of a single IP, right? So a
Exactly.
game like Red Dead Redemption, which took over, I think, 7 years and $700 million to develop the game. Most brands aren't going to have that kind of budget or runway, to deploy a marketing-led initiative to the web, right? So we have to kind of scale back our expectation of what the metaverse is going to deliver day
Hmm.
one. But the good news is there are tools that are available to us right now, thanks to the likes of the folks at Epic Games and Unreal Engine and Unity and other real-time rendering engine platforms that have successfully developed tools that are ready and available for developers to be able to bring applications like Surreal to life, which is to say, you don't have to have a $50 million budget and a team of game developers to create a really compelling 3D experience for multiplayer consumption online today. I mean, all of these things can happen, right now, and so that's what we're really excited about. And I just think that it's going to take a collaboration, beyond the scale of anything that we've seen online yet, in order for this to actually take hold to where you do have a network of little m metaverses that all come together to give
Hmm.
us something that feels kind of like the promise of a Ready Player One metaverse, right? I think we're years and years and years away from that if we ever get there.
All right, so I want to thank our sponsors today, and that is Emrit.io. When you're thinking about helium mining, this is the company to maybe take a look at because it is one thing that they're approaching, and that is the ease and process to actually start and getting going on mining. So, right now, you can actually order a device, which that's probably one of the biggest things that you face right now on helium miners is the lead time to get one of the miners in and to you. With Emrit, you actually can get the miner very quickly. You order it, you can activate it, and then start mining. You go through a process of setups. I like the fact that one, they're a Helium partner, and when you look at partnerships, I think this is a key thing in any kind of project is you need that kind of solidity that kind of connects these big projects with projects like what you're seeing here with Emirates. So one-time hosting fee. This I think is going to really start to ramp up as we see more and more technology lean in on this, including things like 5G, a lot of IoT traffic starting to move in. So the demand for this kind of network architecture is going to be very, very serious. If you're looking at going into Emirate for Business, they can go in and start developing or work with you in developing a fleet for your businesses. So depending on how you are going about this, whether you're doing it as an individual or maybe as a business, you can look at deploying a whole layer of Emirate devices and going with this same approach. So, and you can kind of see here, there's a lot of different use cases for this from retail franchise systems, public spaces, commercial real estate, property, utility monitoring, all sorts of things that really kind of play into the enterprise side of this. So make sure and check out Emrit.io. I want to thank them for sponsoring this episode. All right, so some of the things I think that are interesting here is kind of these verticals. Obviously, Major League Baseball, they've been leaders in the digital ecosystem in the past. The partnership you've done with the Truist Park and kind of how Truist has, I guess, what are you trying to do here with this? What would be the translation of taking what's happening in the A's stadium and converting this to a metaverse type environment?
And this is for the Atlanta Braves, right? So this is
Yeah.
Digital Truist Park, what we call in the Metaverse, which is a more or less a one-to-one digital twin of the actual stadium here in Atlanta.
Hmm.
Uh, this whole project came to light when the Braves saw what Travis Scott did in Fortnite back in 2020, which
Okay.
is in the middle of the pandemic, in which baseball teams like the Atlanta Braves, they're not making money if they're not selling tickets or
Exactly.
concessions in a stadium, right? And so they said, hey, time out, like never again can we allow anything disrupt our business like COVID has. And oh, by the way, we're so incredibly inspired by what's happening in Fortnite, which you might argue is one of the biggest examples of a metaverse today, and
Sure.
say, look, there's an entire market that we may be missing as a baseball organization, to reach a younger new audience and a new generation of fans that might engage with the brand through a gaming platform. And so Um, we started talking back when, the Braves called Epic Games and said, "Hey, we're really interested in doing this." Epic said, "You should reach out to one of our partners, Surreal, that's really taking this to another level in terms of the quality and photorealism of gameplay that you can achieve through the browser." And so we started a conversation. Project kind of took hold in June of 2021. And we worked over the summer to kind of pre-flight the build of the stadium, which is to say, we're just at this point where we're starting to run tests with fans, to say, what do you want out of an experience like this? What are the things that you'd like to do? And the feedback is, fans are excited about access. Fans are excited about getting a little bit closer to the team that they love.
Yeah.
And then people who wouldn't have otherwise engaged with the team are saying, "This is really cool because this feels like a campfire that I hang out with online, hang out with my friends online right now." It feels like kind of a Red Dead Redemption or Grand Theft Auto experience. And oh, by the way, it's being delivered by this baseball team. So
Hmm.
I want to go hang out. I want to see what's going on. And so what we're doing is we're building in the kinds of experiences, which would give fans access to players, access to the team. This whether it's coaches or dignitaries, the opportunity to get exclusives on online events, merchandise, creating games that have value that can unlock real world, value for them. So the more I show up online, the better my odds are getting, a really great in person experience. And so it's a really, like I said, like everything else is so nascent, it's so new, that we're not
Yeah.
trying to prescribe a solution yet. What we're trying to do is we recognize there's opportunities here. The Braves in particular, they recognize there's an incredible opportunity to reach audiences in a place that maybe they couldn't get to before. So we want to go low. We kind of want to go slow, and we want to test things out. And the Braves are an amazing client partner because they're not afraid to fail. They're not afraid to take a risk and say, "We're going to try this and see what people think." And so far, the limited results are pretty fascinating. People are increasingly, excited about what this means and what it could afford them and their friends to get a chance to get a little closer to a world championship baseball team like the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, so you hit on a couple of things there. Obviously, one is experience. It does kind of create some new experience opportunities here with a lot of different, enterprise and retail and, franchise style entities, which to your point could really kind of be one of the growth mechanisms for it to make it mainstream is if you get enough of these kinds of franchises moving into other things like soccer or regular American football, those kind of things that really have large audiences. Not to say
Right.
that baseball does not, but in the essence of trying to get to mainstream adoption. The other thing that you mentioned is the disruption of business, which is obviously that creates a catalyst within many an executive's mind. Is how do we avoid that in the future? But it also represents one of the bigger challenges in the metaverse is, and that is trying to create some sort of economic, element in it, whether it's e-commerce or some sort of digital payments, NFTs, token generations, all those kind of different strategies around blockchain. How far into that side of things are you guys moving into? And that is in the exchange of value within these metaverses.
Yeah, I would say that we're really just getting started, right? Because we can't assume that we know everything out of the gate, right? And so when we think about, in particular, sports and entertainment, we know that fans pay with their eyes and fans pay with their wallets. In order to get to that, we need to create destinations, premium experiences that will bring them back, not just day
Mhm.
one, day two, day three, but we're talking day 60, day 90. And this is where we learn from gaming, right? So there's provide an experience that people want to come to, and then continue to deliver on the promise and premium content that they'll eventually pay for. And so, that's going to take some time. And what's great about the types of companies and organizations that we're working with today is they all get it, right? Where maybe at the start of the pandemic, when there was a big shift to online or hybrid or virtual, it was about the need to execute quickly on an event strategy. Today, what we're getting and what we're hearing is we don't expect to make money in this year or even next year,
Mhm.
but there is a resounding belief in the future of the web and the future of a metaverse that will require us to at least block and tackle and lay the foundation today for what we believe is coming tomorrow. And
Yeah,
that means, we've got to do things that are, like I said, very authentic. We can't make a big play and try and do an obvious money grab right out of the gate because we don't know if
right.
it's going to work yet.
Yeah, for sure. I was looking also entering the Brook Metaverse. This is, of course, coming. Is it still on schedule to hit late 2022?
Yeah, yeah. So this is a project that's in development with a partnership with Burst Live, which is an entertainment platform within the Zone group. Zone's a virtual production company in Finland. Obviously, the estate, which represents Christopher Wallace, aka Biggie Smalls, as
Yeah,
well as William Morris Endeavors, which is part of the IMG group, which is to say we're building the first of its kind hip hop centric metaverse that's going to root itself in the '90s era of Brooklyn, where Biggie Smalls, sort of life, very shortened life, took shape. This is a really exciting project for a lot of different reasons because it's a bridge out into entertainment and servicing a demographic that I think has been somewhat overlooked, or when we think about the metaverse projects that are online currently, an opportunity for fans of hip hop, for African Americans in particular, to have an opportunity to engage in a platform that is really kind of aimed at their interests, it's when you think about the opportunities it presents for artists, especially those that have passed on, is tremendous because that IP, lives on forever. And
yeah,
working with the estate there, you get the sense that there's such a genuine, commitment to the integrity of what the artist stood for, and again, the authenticity of the brand that they've kind of left behind. This metaverse-like experience gives fans a chance to engage with, the origins of Christopher's story, the influences on his life, his music, and then ultimately the resounding impact that it had on hip hop, pop culture, fashion, sense. So it's a really exciting project. We've got the team from Hyperreal, which has developed this amazing avatar, photorealistic avatar that's going to come to life, and fans will be able to experience it later this year.
yeah. I was looking at the model hair collection gives you early access to the Brook Metaverse, obviously through NFTs, as the
Yep.
NFT collection as being one of them. Is that one of the ways that you think we're going to see more interaction? Maybe on the entertainment side, I mean, we've seen Galaverse, we've been covering that over the past few days. Lots happening in that space from both the entertainment side, music, what we could see in terms of real, emerging artists that could just uncork a whole new area of revenue, fan connection and generation, all those kind of things. Do you feel like that is going to be the direction for a lot of the more entertainment focused projects that could be entering into what, especially what you guys are doing at Surreal?
Our approach at Surreal to Web3 has been more of a half step, because we work so closely with enterprise. We know
Hmm.
that there are a lot of questions about how best we shift into a true Web3 blockchain enabled strategy. Um, uh, you know, Experiences like the Brook give us a nice half step into what that looks like, and we look at the value of NFTs not just in the sort of intrinsic quality or value that it holds to the collector of an art piece, but really what is the utility of value that's going to unlock for me, both online and in the real world, right? And so
Hmm.
looking at the Brook, early, token holders are going to be the first to basically be whitelisted into future events. And so there's going to be a concert on the platform. There are going to be a lot of other brands and IP that come in that start to roll out progressively into this space. And those early, fans, those early token holders are going to be, able to unlock access before other users. And so it's really about
Right.
not what is the perspective value of this art that might be able to be unloaded in the future. It's about what does this token grant me? What kind of access am I going to get? Because of my ownership in it. And so we think that's really important. We're also starting to engage more and more with the idea of soul-bound NFTs, which is less, it's not a new concept, but I think it's become more relevant the last few weeks as the crypto market has taken a bit of a hit, where perspective value is not what maybe it once was 60 or 90
Hmm.
days ago.
Yeah.
So we really want to think about, okay, what's in the best interest of both the issuer of the token, the consumer of the token, and how do we not create, how do we avoid creating pure perspective value as an investment tool, and really focus on what the value is going to be for the user of that thing, right? So this is more like loyalty programs or fan clubs, which, if
Right.
you're a frequent flyer or a traveler, Marriott and Delta of the world, I mean, these guys have been doing this successfully for years. The soulbound NFT is a really interesting concept because it does not allow you to sell your NFT. You could either have to burn it or you have to turn it back in. So
Hmm.
we're having more and more conversations, especially on the baseball level, and even with the Brook, where it's like, we want to have high quality of use. We want to have high adoption and concurrency of use, and have members be active in these communities. And that requires a certain level of commitment. And your soulbound NFT requires it of you, that you can't just trade this thing off for some future gain on value.
Hmm.
You've got to be an active participant in the community, and let the token itself be the thing that evolves with you over time to unlock certain access, and that's where the real value lies, not in a financial vehicle. So I
So
think there's
with
a lot to be learned
with
there.
yeah, with that one, Josh, I mean, obviously that means you're talking about a lot more utility aspect because that would be the layer in because the value would be in the experience or,
That's
some
right.
sort of fan engagement in this kind of scenario. Do you see that brings up a good point, and that is the utility ecosystem because this is something from an event standpoint. And if you think about the strategies that event, managers and event organizers and all those people are utilizing, if they are going to convert to something that is much more virtual slash metaverse, the first key they're going to look at is revenue generation or some sort of way to engage that audience because there may be other values. I could think of it this way. If you went to a large event like South by Southwest and you've got all the major Fortune 500 guys in there now, buying booths and advertising and all that. But if South by Southwest were to launch an NFT and the whole purpose of that NFT was to engage not only at the event with the content, but also with those sponsors, I would think that the sponsor lift would be huge. So the revenue really could be on the back side of it versus up on the front side, which is where, like on an NFT sale. So I would agree with that. Interesting stuff.
Yeah, I think you're going to see more of that because right now, or at least in the last few years, you've seen just this colossal shift to new projects where there was liquidity before there was an actual product or there was
Right.
a market, right? So in the past, that you had these freemium models where you would give things away, you'd build an audience, and then you'd monetize it, right? And what's interesting about the way that a lot of the crypto projects, the blockchain projects have gone is, there's an opportunity to buy in early, which builds
Mhm.
liquidity for the project, and then that's how they fund the development of it. And I think where it's challenging is at an enterprise level, right? If enterprise wants to adopt and they want to own, right? If we're going to spend money to develop all these high end experiences, where do we get back, right? What's in it for
Yeah,
us on the enterprise side? And that's as old as kind of the argument around publishing. If I pay for it,
sure.
should I own it, right? And so I think you're going to see that major brands, big brands, and enterprise are going to struggle to just go all in on a pure Web3 play when they're the ones funding out the experiences and paying for the experiences. So we're seeing again more of a blowback to more of a 2.5D model where they want more ownership of the experience, right? And then they can
Yeah.
kind of gate who comes in, who goes out, and then
Mhm.
funding, can happen through ticket sales, merchandise, VIP experiences, as well as sponsorship. And that could be traditional, agreements, or they could be smart contracts.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the interesting aspect to all metaverses is we probably don't even really understand the complete business model just yet. Because I think a lot of people have looked at, the framework that gaming has put out, which is NFT driven, some sort of token, generation event that's some sort of way of being tied to a market. But I see a lot more there, especially from a metaverse aspect, just from the economic structure, because to me, that's so limiting. The opportunity that NFTs represent from a utility aspect, to me, is really the killer app that a lot of people have kind of not necessarily integrated completely yet, because it's hard work, to integrate. I know
Right.
Gary Vee is doing a lot with utility and trying to really do some things with VFriends and kind of the VCon concept, what they're doing, which would be a great Surreal event for sure. VCon would be amazing.
Absolutely.
But but the point being is that I think the opportunity for revenue generation and the growth in terms of just monetization, back to your topic of what you're talking about, is that the content creators creating these large audiences, being able to monetize this through a variety of different of utility based aspect, which will sidestep some of the regulatory scenarios that most likely we're going to be facing in the next few years, especially around NFTs. Um,
Right.
so I see that being a big deal for sure. So it looks like you guys are on the right path. With okay, so last kind of questions for you here.
Yeah.
Timeline. Whether it's an enterprise, an artist, a big brand, they come to you and they say, "Hey, we want to do something like what you did with Truist, or we want to do something like what you did with, kind of the notorious big concept." What is the turnaround time on getting a big project like that launched?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I mean, most, sizable projects, there's a certain amount of development production work that you just can't skirt, right? I mean, when you're creating something that's highly customized, it just takes time. So,
Yeah.
most projects at the scale of Truist are going to require, a 90 to 120 day, kind of runway. And that's to generate all the art assets, build the interactions, and implement everything on our platform. But we have a model that's a bring your own agency or bring your own studio approach, so that if you've got your own in-house Unreal Engine development teams, or you've got an agency that has the workflow that is required
Hmm.
to build these experiences, then you don't need us. We don't want to be a bottleneck to creative. We don't want to be a
Right.
bottleneck to development. But there is like I said, there's a certain amount of production that you just can't skirt. That is,
Yeah.
I guess, somewhat synonymous with, if you think about animated films, or even any virtual production now across commercial or film, there's a labor component, there's a skill component that's required to create something that people will actually want to experience.
Hmm. How far into, I guess now we're getting into the weeds a bit, but from and the last question I promise is, when you look
Yeah.
at the development of that, something like Truist, which was somewhat mostly IP driven because they had all the assets, there was a lot already there, kind of just the rendering side of things. But when you get into maybe a project that maybe they're creating for the metaverse, maybe the first IP release is actually within what you're doing within Surreal. Does that extend it out quite a bit further, or what's the kind of concept there? Do for
I mean,
something like that?
it can. I mean, it can, but I think the beautiful thing is that it doesn't have to. I mean, your project or experience doesn't have to be all things to all people day one.
Okay.
I think what the beauty of the Web3 community is that they want to be engaged early and often. So if there is a way to engage your community by teasing out, what it is that you want to build, or how you want to ultimately get to market, you can sort of go slow. And so there's ways to engage people really early in the project. And then you can kind of have a release schedule, because again, like we talk about, this idea that if you can build something once and people will come, but if you're not committed to programming it and having a release
Yeah.
schedule with content that's going to be fresh, it's going to be hard to get people to come back time and time again. So I think the mindset that people have to have is that this is a long game, right? This isn't a
Yeah.
one-time brand lift where we're going to put a team on something for 6 months and we're going to launch it, and then hope that it's successful for the next 12-18 months.
Hmm.
You need to have a plan that is leading you up to promotion, like from the promotion to the launch of that experience, and carries you all the way through, at least a 12 or 18 month window of time, to really be able to kind of vet out the success, or the key performance indicators of whether that campaign or whether that project was successful. So I do think that there needs to be a long term, kind of vision, and commitment in place, before you even decide to start.
Is this something that you think at some point would be scalable to, let's say, I'll flip over to maybe the fashion industry, or let's go into the restaurant industry for a second. And you think about brands. Chipotle just launched, their big deal on accepting cryptocurrencies. They've tried some attempts at the metaverse. There's a handful of them. Obviously Panera, McDonald's, both have kind of played in this. Is this something that would be scalable to where an average brand could jump in and say, yeah, we want to create an environment like this where we could ramp up loyalty, create our own environment because we have millions of customers already? Is that something that is scalable with Surreal as it is today?
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes. This is still, I would say, as far as the bell curve is concerned, we're still 3 or 4 years out from seeing
Mm,
more
okay.
more of a mass adoption of these types of experiences. I mean, if you look at Decentraland today, I think for Fashion Week, for example, they had 100,000 active users during Fashion Week,
Hmm.
and then it
Yeah,
fell off quite a bit from there. And so that's nowhere near the kind of distribution that will be required for the long-term success of the
exactly.
medium as a whole. So I do think there are definitely, challenges, both in terms of kind of content technology and I guess industry, if you will.
Yeah,
But that's not a reason to shy away from it. If anything, we've learned, in the last 2.5 years that this is a direction that we're accelerating towards now, through the curve of the pandemic, and it's not a passing trend or a fad. It's really going to be kind of core to the fabric of your business going forward. So never has there been a time that's more ideal to at least get started, and that's what we always say. Just now is the time to start your start, because to use another quip, there is a there, you'd
yeah,
rather be gearing up for it now than 2 or 3 years from now.
for sure. Hey, Josh, it's been great diving into Surreal. I'm very intrigued with
Thanks,
kind of the
Paul.
concept of where Metaverse is going. So thanks for stopping in.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks so much.
Okay. All right. So you guys are tuned in over on the podcast right now. Make sure and jump over here to the YouTube channel, which we're going to dive into a lot of our breakdowns, our deep dives, even some of our analytics that we do here on the show quite a bit. And also where we break our Metaverse top 20, all of the kind of things that we track on the blockchain gaming sites right here on this channel. And of course, if you want to reach me, it's out on Twitter at Paul Barron. I'll catch you next time right here on Metaverse Insider.